Hello everyone, Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity here. It is Friday, August 11th, 2017, your weekly update, last one from this beautiful island up in Maine. And the world is really starting to heat up again. Now, one of the things that's been dominating the airwaves for a long time and permeating our experience has been the steady rise of financial markets, and the media is all excited by that, and congressmen are all excited, Trump all excited, taking credit for a stock market that the Dow got over 22,000. The problem, as you know and as I know, it's all complete BS. What do prices mean in a world where central banks print money out of thin air and buy things and the prices go up and then they claim victory? Really, that's like somebody putting a peanut under all three shells and then claiming victory when they correctly guess which one has a peanut under it. It's not anything at all. So the markets have been going up because the central banks have been buying them and making them go up. Directly in the case of the Swiss National Bank, printing money and buying U.S. equities with it, shares of Apple, IBM, GE, things like that. Printing money out of thin air, buying them. What does it mean we live in a world where central banks make money out of thin air and then buy things like your mortgage in your home, if you live in the United States, the largest landlord in the United States, the Federal Reserve, with $1.75 trillion of mortgage-backed securities. By the way, if you default on that mortgage-backed security that the mortgage is tied to, if you default on that mortgage, what happens? Guess who just became your new owner of your house? It's an astonishing process that we have allowed a tiny cabal, correctly used word, a cartel of bankers to print money out of thin air and then buy the productive and real assets of the country that they allegedly are in service to. Well, that's the world that we live in, and so here's how crazy it got. When you misprice money, everything gets mispriced and it gets crazy. And of course, you and I, we have to live with the crazy impacts of that. If you are attempting to buy a house as a first-time house buyer in one of the key markets, we now know that over 200,000 homes are owned by private equity firms who have access to really cheap capital, who step into these markets, bid all cash, buy homes, and then rent them back to struggling first-time home buyers who can no longer afford those homes, but most importantly can't outbid these companies that get money for super cheap from the central bankers. So it's not even just the Federal Reserve buying houses directly through mortgage-backed securities, it's also them handing money at ultra-low rates to companies that can outbid you because their cost of capital is close to zero and yours might be 3 or 4%. Totally different equations when you're looking at a 30-year loan. Now, here's how crazy it got though. This week, we saw junk bonds in Europe trade at a lower yield than U.S. 10-year Treasury debt. Now, think this through for a second. This is all junk bonds in Europe. They normally have a default rate that's in the low double digits to high double digits, meaning anywhere from 10% to as high as 20 to 25% during periods of crisis or strife. If you're only getting compensated 2.4% for junk debt, it means that only 2.3% of them can go bankrupt before the entire pool of those has lost you money. Will 2.3% of Italian companies go bankrupt this year? You bet they will. It's astonishing. It's dumb. It's stupid. You can't make sense of it. And we're supposed to make sense of it. And all of this is happening, meanwhile, while the whole world around us is clearly on fire. We have a North Korean crisis that's astonishing. Relations with Russia have never been lower. In case you didn't notice, there's still stuff going on in Syria, including the fact that Kurdish separatists who the United States supplied with armaments just took out a tank that was supplied to other groups by Turkey. So the United States weapons are now being used directly against Turkey. Any question why Turkey is now closer with Russia than the United States? You can begin to unravel that in that story. So all of this stuff is happening. The Middle East is still on fire. We have stuff going on in Asia, and yet stocks just kept floating higher and higher. Why? Not because they should, but because central banks have been buying them. It's one of the dumbest things ever. So yesterday, on Thursday, we saw a pretty big correction in the markets. Things started to sort of catch up, and I'm on record as saying that when the big downturn comes, it's going to be really vicious. It's going to be really sharp because the market consists solely of central banks and also high-frequency trading algorithms who just can vanish in a skinny minute, fraction of a second actually, when conditions aren't quite right. So we have these false markets, they're distorted, it's all crazy, and it's all in service of this idea, this delusion, that we can just keep going the way we have been going, that we can build a durable fantasy idea that's based on this fantasy really, that we can grow infinitely forever. As long as we can keep people borrowing and consuming more than they're earning, we can keep this wonderful game going. But it's not a wonderful game. It's not wonderful for you. It's not wonderful for me. So I've got a new two-parter out. Check it out. I go through some of that base data, which says, bing, bang, boom, we are unhappy, unhappy, unhappy. When you look at alcoholism rates, opioid deaths, obesity levels, psychoactive drug use and antidepressants and things like that, unhappy, unhappy, unhappy. So it's time to fix this story. It's time. It's time to wake up. It's time to just understand that that old story is gone, and it's time to come up with a new story. So with that, that's the invitation this week, is come by, check out these new reports we're writing, and also be aware the markets have started to signal that maybe the delusional period of central bank supplied fantasy pricing is coming to an end. Maybe, maybe not. But when it does, things will change in a hurry. That's my weekly update for this week. I will see you next week.